Hey, it's Jack, here with an ad. Sitting with me is my friend Joe Fye. He's got a podcast, Radio Free BTC. Joe, what is your podcast about?
Bitcoin.
That's cool. Do you cover other things like Minnesota politics?
Bitcoin.
What about national politics?
Bitcoin.
Do you ever get into sports? I don't talk about it a lot, but people love sports. Do you ever talk about sports?
Bitcoin.
Okay. There you have it. If you want a podcast about only Bitcoin, download Radio Free BTC wherever podcasts are sold.
It's the Jack Tomczak Show.
And joining us in studio is State Representative Paul Novotny. Hi, Paul.
How you doing, Jack?
I'm doing well. All right. You've been on this show never, and on my previous show, Up and Adam, never. And I'm sorry for that. I should have gotten to you sooner.
Well, in all fairness, Jack, you did ask a couple of times, but I don't I'm trying to come out of my shell, but I did nothing to encourage it.
Okay, so this is your fault.
Well,
then
I'll take it.
I take back my apology, and now I demand one from you.
I apologize for your misunderstanding.
Not accepted. All right. You're relatively new to the legislature. When were you first elected?
February of 2020.
And Zerwas's former seat? Or am I making that up?
Seat formerly occupied by Representative Zerwas, yes.
Okay. It's I think it's been known now for years as the Novotny seat that Nick was previously sitting in.
Yeah. It's a lot like farming. You can, if you've ever been farming, somebody could be there 5 years or they could be there 100 years, but it's not the people that are living on it now. It's the people that lived on it last.
Right.
So you might be there 100 years, but it was...
It's still the Smith farm.
Yeah, still the Smith farm because they were the ones that had it before you.
All right. So the reason we're talking now is that the House Republicans put out a press release saying Novotny slams controversial police proposal. New proposal could be recommended to post board as soon as Wednesday. I'm going to read from the press release, and then we will explain why your opinion on this matters and what your opinion is. The release says, on Monday, the chair of the Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council released a controversial proposal that would be voted on as soon as Wednesday and forwarded to the Minnesota Board of Peace Officers Standards, that's POST, for adoption that would fundamentally alter the discipline process for police officers. The proposal would allow the POST board to discipline officers in use of force incidents, even if the incidents did not result in conviction or even a prosecution. All right, explain what I just read, explain why people should listen to what you have to say on the topic, and explain what the right answer to all this is. Go. And under an hour.
Fire
away.
Why should they listen to me? Well, everybody has a thing that they call due process rights that are guaranteed by a piece of paper called the Constitution.
I've heard of it.
Been around a while. If you can Google it. One of the things you have is a right to due process and not be convicted without having some kind of some process. Hence the name. But this thing that they're proposing through this citizen advisory board.
Is that what POST is?
This advisory board was put together as part of the air quotes public reform package from the summer of 2020 in response to the George Floyd incident. And this panel, made up of community activists, some people like mental health groups, a couple of victim groups, and then representatives from the House and the Senate, and one from each, majority and minority. So there's 4 legislators that are assigned. There's representatives from a sheriff's office, police chiefs, and representing the working cops would be the MPPOA, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association.
Okay, this board, is this the Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relation Advisory Council, or is this board you're talking about the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards?
The Ensuring Police Excellence
Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council is the board that was set up last summer, 2020, after the George Floyd thing, and it's filled with a bunch of interested groups.
Yes.
Okay.
So this board was supposed to make recommendations, hence the name, that would go to the post board, the real post board. And
that's the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards.
And
what's
training.
the T for?
Training.
Okay. It's not in the press release. I'll talk to the person who wrote that and we'll clear that up. Okay, so the group that just started last summer, they've written this proposal that they have or will submitted to the post board. Okay.
So this advisory council can send things to the regular post board, and by the legislation that was set up, they're supposed to at least be recognized by the post board, the regular post board.
Okay.
For changes.
So it doesn't have to be, their recommendations don't have to be accepted, but they have to be at least recognized and heard that they submitted it. Okay.
And
it's not like if I set up some type of community council and started sending recommendations, they could ignore that because I'm just some dude.
I would never think of you that way, Jack.
I know you wouldn't, but boards and councils and whatnot might.
Maybe I'm cynical after seeing how and I was nominated to be on the council based on my training and experience, and I don't know if I touched on that at all, but
no, that's the why should people care about your opinion
why
part.
should I care about
You're
that?
a cop.
All right, let's go back to that. 33 years, retired. Well, I was elected in February 2020, and I was still working at that time. I knew I'd be retiring in the end of May of 2020 when I turned 55. So for the first 6 months that I was in the legislature, I did them both, going to St. Paul and working weekends still. So that was pretty interesting.
Where were you a police officer?
Sherburne County Sheriff's Office.
So Sheriff's Office. Okay, Sherburne County. You're 55? You look good.
I was 55.
You were.
56 now.
Oh, that's what time does.
It's the Yellowstone beard that makes me look young, Jack. Never mind the gray. So during that time, I was did investigations for combined probably 9 years out of that, maybe 10.
Okay.
But overall, biggest thing I did was I was a sergeant in charge of training.
Okay.
A lot of use of force, firearms. Did everything involved in training and tracking of the training and that kind of stuff. So this seemed like a perfect fit to get in there and do some use of force recommendations. That's what everything is really focused around, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So thought it'd be great to be on this council. Was honored when Leader Doubt nominated me for it. Soon became apparent that, and like I said, maybe I'm cynical. Seems like the underlying mission of this board was to get things in front of the post board that they couldn't get done through regular legislation.
Sure.
Right. There's a process. This stuff could all be done through regular legislative channels.
Mm-hmm.
This seems like a backdoor suggestion.
Okay.
And that has been the theme that we've been going on.
Okay.
But it's a stack board, just like the post board is.
Which way is the post board stacked?
The post board is stacked, and most people don't know this, but the post board's all nominated by the governor.
Okay.
You're appointed by the governor. And that's one thing I'd like to change going forward. If we ever get GOP in charge of the legislator, because you shouldn't be politicizing something like this.
Yep.
You wouldn't have a politicization.
Politicization? It's a tough one.
Of the medical board or the lawyers board.
Sure.
Or anything like that. This shouldn't be politicized.
But where do you draw the line between public accountability and politicization? Like anytime you're going to want public accountability, politics is going to find a way to get into it. And with police, especially nowadays, the demand for public accountability is super high. As it should be.
Yeah, it should be. Absolutely. And we've got standards that everybody wants. This is my career. I spent a lot of time expecting the people that I supervised to have a high level of service and
integrity.
Integrity. Sherburne County is a medium-sized department, but it's still a department where you know everyone, and there's not 5 degrees of separation in Sherburne County. There's like 3 degrees of separation. And
what does that mean?
You can arrest people if they need to be arrested, and if they need to be arrested and you treat them right, they will understand that.
Okay.
And I can say that because can't tell you how many times I've been at Walmart or the gas station or the grocery store and run into somebody that I've had dealings with. And hey, if you treat them right and they know that they got what's coming to them, and you weren't out to screw them.
Get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing what you got to do because it's the right thing to do. I've got arrested. I've got invited to weddings of people that I've arrested for domestic assault.
Get that drop. Really?
Yeah.
Because the way in which you arrested them
and they
was above board, and
you made a difference in their life.
Okay.
Right. And in the meantime, you build that reputation. And I've had the conversation with parents when the kid is complaining about the way he was treated.
Mm-hmm.
And, the remark would be, well, if Paul arrested you, you had it coming. Okay?
Well.
I had another one. I was working the night shift supervisor and got involved in a knockdown, drag-out domestic. I got there late, but the guy was out of hand. And he ended up going to jail and wanted to file an officer complaint. Well, the jail called me.
Hang on, I feel like this is a story we want to get in its entirety. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. I'm talking with State Representative Paul Novotny on all things cop related on the Jack Tomczak Show on AM 1280 The Patriot. Welcome back to the Jack Tomczak Show. I'm Jack Tomczak. I'm talking with State Representative Paul Novotny. We're talking about the Ensuring Police Excellent and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council, or NAMBLA.
I've heard it pronounced both ways.
And the recommendation it sent to the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training, or POST. And we left off because we're getting into why you should care about what Representative Novotny has to say, because he was with the Sherburne County Sheriff's Office the whole time, all 33 years with the Sheriff's Office, or was that just the last place you were?
That was 33 years at Princeton. I did like a year and a half at Princeton before going to.
Okay. Can you say that somebody who works at the sheriff's office is a cop, or you have to say that they're a sheriff, or should I just say 33 years in law enforcement?
You're a cop.
Okay.
Law enforcement. Potato.
Okay. And we left off talking about how in your career and your experience that if you treated the people you arrested well and by the rules, there were no hard feelings, and you've been invited to weddings of people you've arrested for domestic violence.
Yeah.
And
one twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
And you were telling a story before I interrupted you to go to the break.
Well,
Continue.
So the process is somebody wants to file a complaint against an officer. Somebody goes in and takes the complaint. If you're one of the officers involved, obviously you can't take the complaint and fill that reform out. So the jail sergeant ended up having to fill out the complaint himself. Next morning about noon, guy sobers up and wakes up, and they said, hey, I typed up this complaint. You're going to have to sign it.
Mm-hmm.
And he reads the complaint, and he says, Paul Novotny, what's he got to do with it? Well, he was one of the officers involved.
Okay.
And he said, well, if Paul Novotny kicked my backside, I guess I had it coming. I just want to make perfectly clear, there was no kicking
of
anybody
backside.
It was
a rhetorical,
simply getting
hyperbolic backside kicking.
Right. He was that out of it that he had no idea what was going on. But when you have treated people in the past, you build up that equity, and you've got that. And I want people to have that confidence in everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And the point I was trying to make before the break is that, the 3 degrees of separation. I've arrested my relatives. I've arrested my best friend's kids.
Wow.
I've been on traffic stops with 2 law enforcement officers that resulted in DUIs.
Okay.
And a domestic. These are all serious issues.
Mm-hmm.
You treat people the way they're supposed to be treated, and you follow the rules. And that's the way it should be done. But the final point, and I'll get back to it, is that if somebody that was under my supervision goes out and treats somebody like a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't have my phone number, they're going to have somebody who knows my phone number and can get a hold of me and said, this guy's not doing stuff the way it should be done. Okay. And that's the nice thing about a small town.
Mm-hmm. So you're exactly the kind of person who should be a state representative, long-time service in the community, and judgment so good that even people who you arrest are on your side.
Well, as far as I know.
And now that you've done the show, you're going to be famous. I hope you're ready for that. You're going to get the Nick Zerwas treatment. He was nobody before he ran across
I remember
this guy.
how excited he was the first time you had him on.
Uh-huh. So
we had to go over and listen to it.
yeah, you might be governor by next year.
Yeah, I doubt it.
The year after. Yeah. This is going to be a fun ride
I
for you.
spent 33 years of my life hiding from cameras and avoiding the spotlight.
Which is exactly why you're the kind of guy who should be governor. That's what we need. We need politicians who aren't politicians, and I think you're that kind.
Boy, I was listening to a guy with a political background who's got a podcast a couple weeks ago. He said something to the effect of, there are people that go into politics because they want to do something, and there's people that want to be somebody.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you know him. But
It's an excellent show.
Yeah.
Excellent show.
And if there's any takeaway I've learned from the last year and a half that I've been in the legislature is that, you were right, Jack. There's
I'm sorry, what?
Said you were right.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 types of people down there, and there's a lot more people down there that want to do the right thing.
That's good to know.
Okay, everybody talks about politics and politicians, and they make these big, sweeping generalizations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there's a whole bunch of people, like I said, that you don't even know their name. They go in, they do good policy work. We do a lot of stuff that needs to be done because it's the right thing to do, and you'll never hear about it because it never makes the news.
Now, that's exactly like how police officers are. It's the bad apples that end up in the newspaper, and you never see the story of all of the good things that a police officer does or all the wonderful times where they exercise impeccable judgment. You see the stories of the cop who is not good at being a cop and made a mistake and somebody ended up dead. Like those are the things that get the headlines. So the perception of everybody in the occupation is tarnished by that, and that's exactly the same with politicians. Like doing the quiet good things doesn't get people attention. It's the politician stuff that nobody likes that seems to get attention. So a lot of similarities.
You're probably right. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, you're always right, Jack.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's been a couple times I've disagreed with your opinion in the days, but
and we'll get to that. Never. But so let's and we'll get back to the reason for the press release and the proposal that was sent at some point during this 3-day interview, but. In your position as somebody who trained law enforcement people, what did you make of the George Floyd incident where we had the video of the cop kneeling on him and then he died and he still was kneeling on him? I've talked to one police officer who said that wasn't by the book. What are your thoughts? Aren't you glad you came in?
Was shocked to find out that the kneeling on the neck was still a taught
Practice?
Practice.
Okay. Because the cop I talked to said it wasn't taught. And I didn't watch the trial.
I was under the impression that Minneapolis, up until pretty much right before the incident, was teaching that.
Huh.
Have a friend that was in a pretty high leadership position when he retired from Minneapolis, and he had told me that, like, well, that's what we were taught last time I was at use of force training.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have that come out in the news that up until, time is getting away from us here now, but yeah, that was taught. It's like, okay.
And it's no longer taught.
God, I hope not.
Yeah. And not having any background in law enforcement or hand-to-hand combat, I'm fine with that unless it kills people. Then I'm not fine with it. Because I'm fine with the police if you're a danger to yourself or others, restraining you so you can't hurt yourself or others unless that restraint kills you. So I was like, I don't expect police officers to show up to dangerous situations and say, oh, Mr. Perpetrator, could you please get into the back of the police car? Can I get you anything for your journey? Like, I don't think anybody expects that.
I can show you a couple of the scars if we get time here. I got one finger taped up right now, so I can't show you of cuts and things that have happened from people that were handcuffed behind their back.
Wow.
People that are handcuffed and behind the back, they can fight. Well, actually, I've got a scar right here on my right pinky.
Okay. Running
across right there. Mm-hmm. Okay. That was from 1989. No, 88. 1988, a 135-pound female that had a razor blade in her belt that because she was a female, I wasn't able to discover that until she was handcuffed and she got to that razor blade. And that was, in 33 years, that was the fight of my life.
Really?
Okay. Getting her handcuffed, and that was the fight of my life.
Was the fight of your life after she was cuffed?
Both.
Wow.
Okay. She cut me after she was handcuffed.
Where was the razor blade?
Back.
Like in her belt, in the back?
Yep.
Wow. So she planned for getting arrested.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She was a frequent flyer.
But you managed not to kill her.
Yeah.
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 So more of that and less of the other thing.
Almost did, right before that.
Yeah.
She had pulled a replica firearm on me that was a BB gun.
That's a terrible idea.
If you've ever seen these Crossman BB guns, they look exactly like a 1911, black, same exact dimensions. She pointed that to me in the dark, trying to get me to do a suicide by cop.
Okay, I swear to God, we're going to get to the topic at hand, but you keep, like, right as we lead up to the break, you keep starting with these super interesting stories. How did you not, you know what, I'm just going to have you start that whole story when we come back from the break. And you've listened to my show, so you know my opinion on this, but I'll restate it. There's an answer that isn't all cops are saints and all cops are the devil. Like, the answer's somewhere in between. And there are people invested on both extremes that I think are making a rational conversation about the nuance of this problem more difficult. All right, when we come back, we're going to hear about the time that State Representative Paul Novotny had a gun pulled on him and ended up not killing the person. You're listening to the Jack Tomczak Show on AM 1280 The Patriot. Welcome back to the Jack Tomczak Show. I'm Jack Tomczak. I'm talking with State Representative Paul Novotny, who was a cop for 33 years. We're talking police reform and the Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council thing. But we left off talking about how you arrested somebody back in 1988, 87?
88.
And a small woman who had a razor blade concealed that she managed to hurt you with after she was handcuffed, but before that, she pulled a BB gun on you in an attempt to be suicided by a cop. What happened, and why didn't you shoot her? Because in a lot of situations, she'd be dead.
To this day, I can tell you exactly what her shirt was wearing, a plaid shirt. Very much like yours.
I wear a lot of ladies'
hers was
clothes.
More of a blue plaid. And at the time, we were carrying revolvers.
Okay.
And I was pretty good with it.
Okay.
And had absolute confidence. And I had taken a tactical repositioning. Further put in that because I had moved, I had put the passenger. She was sitting in the driver's seat.
Okay, she's in a car and you pulled her over?
No, I had pulled in. She was sitting in an area that we used to sit and park the squad cars.
Okay.
And as I pulled in there, she pulled the gun. And
so she knew you were going to be there and went there on purpose just
Yes.
so you would shoot her.
Yes.
Eesh.
So I did the tactical repositioning, and by doing that, then the passenger sitting was directly in the line of fire.
Okay.
So she would have been right. If I missed or it went through her, more likely that it was going to go through her, because at that time I can still see the button on her shirt, and I knew without a doubt which button I was going to hit.
Wow.
Right? That's the kind of thing your brain does.
You gave me goosebumps.
Yeah. I still, and at that time, probably could have. Right. And we'll get further off the path, not talking about what we were here to talk about.
You know how it goes.
Had a sergeant, ended up a chief deputy. He once pointed out to me that good shots have good shoots.
Good shots have good shoots.
Yes.
Explain that.
If you are confident and you've got that calming, it's calming. And you are going to make sure that it is a gun. You're going to make sure that they've got a gun in your hand, because you can take that extra second to actually see what it is. And it helps a lot that you don't get the huge adrenaline dump.
Okay.
Because that's where stuff goes wrong.
How do you get that quality into every police officer or more police officers? Because isn't that that's the moment where it counts? That's where you have to have your judgment. Every cop has to have your judgment in that situation. That's the judgment that movie cops have. Paul Novotny, movie cop.
Yeah. Okay, so there was this other podcast I was listening to, and the host of that podcast had a guest in. I can't remember what the guest name was, but they were speaking something of you don't expect cops to be perfect. You just expect them to be as good as an airline pilot.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. I can't remember
that brilliant podcaster said. Well, it's the professions where we really need excellent judgment, because if you screw up, like this is probably what I said in that show. If I screw up,
didn't say it was you.
Well, of course not. Nobody assumed. But if I screw up, nobody dies. Airline pilot screws up or a cop screws up, people can die.
Don't worry about it.
I'll get it.
So after that podcast said that, I'm like, you know what? You're right.
You're the best guest ever.
They should be. they should be that good. But you know what? We don't treat them like airline pilots. We don't give them the level of training that airline pilots get and the level of realization that airline pilots get. Let me sum that up for you. And you do use of force training. We're going to do a little hand-to-hand and some handcuffing. We're going to use a padded room. Everybody's going to stretch out beforehand. Everything's going to be good. Make sure there's nobody hurt beforehand because nobody wants to do a first report of injury on a training thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it'll all be great. We'll do it carefully. And, when I get to a pressure point and the plane's good enough, we're going to tap out. A couple months later, we'll do firearms training. We'll be very careful. We'll stand in a booth. We'll put a target directly in front of you. Someone will tell you when to shoot, how many rounds to shoot at a target that's directly in front of you with nothing else behind you.
Mm-hmm.
We might do taser training. We'll be very careful. Make sure there's no firearms in the things so nobody makes a mistake. There'll be, we'll have glasses on and somebody will hold your arm so you don't fall down and hurt yourself. It's all great.
Not realistic?
That's not very
Not at
realistic,
all.
is it?
No.
That's like, and this, I don't know if anybody's ever used a sports analogy in life before.
This might be the first time.
But
I was going to have one too, but you'll be the pioneer on this one. Sports analogy.
Sports analogy. Look, imagine that your quarterback
That's exactly the analogy.
just threw at a tire hanging in front of them that doesn't move, and you might move back and forth a little bit, and there's nobody in your face trying to
that's easy
smash
to
you
do.
into the pavement.
Nobody who's twice your
Right.
size and twice as strong as you and running full speed while you're standing still is trying to hurt you
In the
that
middle of the
situation.
night when you don't feel good and
Yep.
you wish you had gone to the bathroom 2 hours ago, but
Yep.
there was no place to go, and all those things are running through your mind. We don't practice like that.
No.
You ever watch somebody kicking field goals before a game? Man, they can kick from like 60 yards.
Yep.
And make every one.
But nobody's
Nobody's trying to
demanding.
kill them.
Yep. Nobody's trying to kill him. Nothing's on the
Right.
line.
Right? We got to put it all together.
Can you do that for training? Or how close can you get to realism for training?
I think that's what we got to work on, and we've got to make that available.
Virtual reality.
Virtual
I'm not kidding.
reality's okay.
It's closer.
It's okay, but how do you put it together? Have you ever gone from use of force, hands-on scenario to all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, it's a deadly force situation?
No.
Or gone from a deadly force situation to it's not a deadly force situation anymore, and now you're going to a hands-on situation.
No.
Can you put your gun back in your holster under stress?
The two times I thought I was going to die, my response was not what I would have anticipated. And my body did things I would not have anticipated. And I wasn't thinking as quickly as I normally do. It was the strangest sensation I've ever had. And I don't know how you, without lots of experience of being in that situation, I don't know how you can prepare for that. Like S hits the fan, and suddenly things you've heard about, that's very real and happening to you right then and there. And I don't know how you prepare for that in a way that when it happens, like, it's not foreign and scary and weird for you. I don't know.
You've got to train through that, and you've got to have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm proposing, this program, and I think it'll solve a bunch of other problems that we also have.
Okay.
Say, for example, the duty to intercede.
Explain that.
Okay, so as part of, once again, the police reform thing that came in summer 2020. You've got a duty to intercede. When you see someone that is exceeding the necessary force, using excessive force, you have a duty to say stop.
This is if the person using unnecessary force, like, that's another cop in that
Right.
situation, like,
Right.
you have a duty then to say, hey, knock it off.
Right. So
Hey, you.
the First Amendment that I had passed, first piece of legislation with my fingerprints on it, was as part of that package, they just wanted to put in a law that says a cop's got to intercede.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I think they should. Yeah, absolutely. Right? You wouldn't stand by and let a citizen do it. You shouldn't let another cop do it. But I said, wait a minute, stop. You can't just have a law. This is something that you might see on your second day on the job, like a couple of cops did in Minneapolis in the May of 2020. Or you could be on 20 years before you have to make this decision and say, hey, wait a minute. Can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Going to have to train for that. We're going to make sure that that is included in the post standards.
Yeah, without training, piping up on your first day, that's either difficult or impossible.
Because you could be going to trial.
Yeah, and you're new, and the guy who's doing the thing you want to call out is not new.
Right.
That's a tough situation to be in.
So I'm proposing, we do this multidisciplinary use of force training that's, involving all the simulations that we want to go to, but involving multiple departments. Because everybody trains, DNR trains with the DNR, State Patrol trains with the State Patrol, Minneapolis trains with Minneapolis. At 2:00 in the morning at the end of the chase, man, you're going to be stuck with who's ever there.
All right. Hold tight. We're going to come back and talk more about the multidisciplinary use of force training with State Representative Paul Novotny on AM 1280, The Patriot. Welcome back to the Jack Tomczak Show. I'm Jack Tomczak. I'm talking with State Representative Paul Novotny, who spent 33 years as a cop. And we left off talking about a training proposal that you have, a multidisciplinary use of force training across all law enforcement entities.
Yes. I've got to come
that
up with,
rolls off the tongue real well.
Eventually, I've got to come up with a name for it. But that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
I've talked to skills programs. I've been to Ripley to meet with different schools. I've been to different places. I think it's worth doing. If we look at, if you remember the incident that happened in Buffalo, the Buffalo Clinic last spring, a guy goes in and starts shooting up the clinic and has some improvised explosives that he's setting off. A couple don't go off. Several of the officers had just been to a training called 3 Echo, which is like an active shooter training for you bring in multiple jurisdictions and disciplines, so it's not just the cops. And by that I mean, if it's a school shooting, every cop, investigator, federal, crick cop, anybody with a gun, it's in a school, they're all going to show up. Okay. And you're also going to have fire, and you're going to have paramedics, and this is getting everybody to be on the same page. The Wright County experience in Buffalo was that exact scenario.
Sure. Everybody showed up.
And a couple of the cops that had been to the 3 Echo training were able to go, hey, I've got this, because I had just been through this. And they were successfully able to go in, get the guy into custody.
Good.
And there was unexploded improvised devices in there that they had to deal with, and they didn't freeze. Everybody that was on that response saved lives. And that's what I'm using as a
model. That's good. Because I don't know, again, with no experience in the military or law enforcement, again, it was football for me. That was the dangerous thing. And to train the right way and for a significant period of time where when the worst day of your life happens, you don't freeze, you don't panic, you don't make bad decisions, and you do the things that you learned in the training. Like, that's the goal. How many hours of training does someone need to have so when S hits the fan, they have the muscle memory or the judgment memory to kick into action?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't. There's people that have done studies, Mankato State or whatever they call Mankato now, University of Mankato, whatever. There's 4 studies down there that really looks into that. That could probably give you a better number. I used to work with them a lot when I was doing the full-time training, but yeah, it's no different than football. I heard a magician was saying how somebody will say, "Oh, it's you play the piano so beautifully. I wish I had that talent." Well, no, it's hours of practice.
Hours
and
hours.
No, yeah. I mean, I just wish I could do it. No, it's hours of practice.
Yeah, start now.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, you'll have the hours of practice, and you can do that. What I just did.
Then it'll seem natural.
Yeah, because I did the 10 years before we got to today.
Yeah.
Are there other cops or former cops in the legislature?
Yeah, Brian Johnson, he's retired. A Sandy County deputy. Matt Grossel's Clearwater County deputy.
Okay.
Retired. Sheriff Engelbritson.
Yep.
He's a senator.
Any DFLers?
No.
That's, I guess, not unexpected.
There used to be Danny Schoen.
Yeah.
He was a DFLer, but
What happened to that guy?
I don't know. He's doing well. He's in shape from what it looks like.
I guess so. Some type of alarm is going off. Deputy, I don't know if you need to leap into action.
Bad phone.
So the proposal that the Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council sent to the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training.
Well, it didn't get sent.
Okay, because the press release came out on Monday. We're recording this on Wednesday. This is going on the air on Saturday. How did that shake out? And what did they want? They wanted discipline officers based on complaints, but not regardless of whether the officer was convicted of whatever the complaint was about.
Well, I'll read you what they're proposing. And like you said, it's the last 7 or 8 words. Whether or not a licensee is prosecuted or convicted. And I'm not a lawyer in the state of Minnesota. And to me, that as I read statute, that means the post board is going to investigate and possibly revoke your license. And the post board right now has not the means or the ability to investigate
And it's a political body appointed by the governor at this point.
Yeah.
Well, this allows the people who are unhappy if a cop is not convicted or charged with something, this allows them to get their pound of flesh.
As we've seen on several other bills that came through in the last year and a half, they want to have citizen review boards so that short of, if they can't get a criminal conviction, if they can't get an administrative sanction against the officer, then they still want the right to discipline up to and including termination.
I think I've figured out, it popped into my head now, tell me if I'm wrong, but the place for a citizen review board is in maybe policy and best practices. It really shouldn't be as a prosecutorial entity, because we have courts for that. It shouldn't be a disciplinary entity because we have that within a department and in the judicial system. Because I'm not against citizens having a voice, a seat at the table, a say in what police do.
No, and they should, because that's who we work. Well, isn't that what the city council is, or county boards, or state legislators?
Fair point.
But at some point, you don't want to see how the sausage is made, right? Or
some people do.
If that even swings, then maybe that might be a swing and a miss there on that one. But I'm not a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go to the medical board and make an expert recommendation on what a doctor should or shouldn't have done in the blink of an eye.
Yeah. Though now that healthcare is becoming politicized. Maybe we're going to see that too. The demand for citizen advisory boards for medical licensure.
We'll go back to the airplane thing. And I see we're coming up again.
Yeah.
I've done simulations. I'm a private pilot. I can land a plane. I've landed a B-52 in a simulator. I've landed regional jets. I've landed a DC-9 in a simulator when everything's going right. Everything's easy when everything's going right.
True.
It's when things go wrong.
All right, when we come back, I didn't know you were a pilot. One more segment with State Representative Paul Novotny. Welcome back to the Jack Tomczak Show. I'm talking with State Representative Paul Novotny, who spent 33 years as a cop, and I just learned is a private pilot. And that's the... Were you also an NFL quarterback? Because that would take all of my analogies together. It'd be perfect.
I'm going to quit bringing anything up, or I'm never going to get out of here.
Yeah. You have to now. This is it. Last segment, because I got a judge after you.
Like
Big deal.
Kansas, everything comes and goes so quickly.
Mm-hmm. So, you're a pilot. This might explain why you had good judgment as a cop. Not because a pilot would make you a good judgment, but you are a person with good judgment, and those are the people who should be flying airplanes and being police officers.
I was a cop first.
Can you train good judgment? Can you train calm? Can you train maturity into people? Like the cop who shot Justine Damond, hope I got that name right, he was new. I don't think you would have made that mistake. I don't think anybody who's been on the force for longer would have made that mistake.
You're probably right.
I also don't think you would have made that mistake on your first day.
Oh, well, I don't want to get too into it, but yeah, I almost did shoot somebody on my first day.
Get that drop.
Who didn't want to get caught.
Hope you enjoyed your time in the state legislature, Paul.
He didn't want to get caught with the small amount of marijuana in his waistband, so as we're pulling up to him on a stolen vehicle call, he reaches into his waistband.
Dumb. Don't do that.
To pull out what turned out to be a small bag, and as we're telling him stop, but he didn't want to get caught with a dope, so he pulls it out and throws it right before. So I don't know if it wasn't my first day, it was at least my second day. No later than that.
I don't know. Like the silver lining in the stories that we've seen in the last 5 years of people being shot by a law enforcement person, like what I've taken from that is it's a tense situation for the cop as well. Even pulling somebody over, in their head, they're thinking this could go wrong. Don't make any sudden moves. And if other people learn that from the public discussion on police shootings, maybe that's a good thing. Like, that is a good thing. I don't know how many other people, like, that's their takeaway. That's my takeaway. Like, just don't be a jerk. Keep your hands where everybody can see them, and don't make any sudden movements, because that's when mistakes happen. Make it easy for the cop not to shoot you.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I'm going to put that on a billboard. I'm going to crowd fund for that.
Yeah, think how much simpler all of our lives would be.
Yeah. So are you familiar with the organization Americans for Prosperity?
I used to know a guy that worked there.
Any family members involved?
Yes.
Yeah. As you know, AFP, criminal justice reform is one of their things. Mm-hmm. And it kind of runs counter, and certainly runs counter to maybe traditional, like the Republican opinion on law enforcement. And certainly it runs counter to 2020 presidential election year. Everybody needs to get as many votes as they can politics. It's the AFP perspective on it is a little more nuanced than Blue Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter and nary the twain shall meet. What is the answer on criminal justice reform, being tough on crime, but not ruining people's lives who made a little mistake in their youth? It's an easy question. You should be able to answer it, Representative.
How to boil it down
very
to a simple
simple
question. A whole bunch of what the state does right now has got nothing to do with people that made small mistakes when they
Okay.
were young. We're doing a whole lot of dealing with people that aren't young and aren't making small mistakes.
Okay.
They're people that have made the same mistake over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And our criminal justice system right now is becoming the British Bobby system.
Explain.
Stop or I'll be forced to tell you stop again.
Okay. Don't make me say stop a third time, because you were not going to like that.
How does that work with your kids?
Doesn't. Like, there has to be rules, warning, consequences. And if you don't have the consequences, the warning means nothing, and the rules mean nothing.
I think the state, and I'm using a broad stroke there, the state, there's certain groups that have forgotten the state is supposed to represent the victim.
Okay.
Everything we do in the name of public safety reform in the last year and a half that I've been there seems to be focused, well, and once again, I'm generalizing even what I've done. The stuff that causes the controversy, stuff that causes the heartburn is the stuff that is worried more about criminal justice, and by that I mean justice for the criminals.
Okay.
I spent my career standing up for the victim.
Mm-hmm.
The state used to be, state of Minnesota versus the suspect.
Okay.
We've got a judicial system right now that is not. You got a judge coming up.
John Thunheim, yes. But we're not talking judge stuff. We're talking civics,
I've
education.
Got about 5 bills to deal with judicial reform. I think law enforcement in the state is carrying their weight.
Okay.
The ball is getting dropped in the court system.
I don't have the details at the top of my head, but last year, there was was it a murder on the Green Line? Or at least an assault on the Green Line, and the guy who did it had recently, he had a violent crime, and he was not in jail, and he should have been, and he did it again. The guy in Milwaukee who drove his car through the parade, he did a violent thing, and he was not in jail. And I think you can put people in jail that we're afraid of, and people we're mad at. Deal with them in a different way.
Well, if you want to go back to AFP, they want to do stuff with bail reform.
Mm-hmm.
Is there room for us to do bail reform and still stand up for the victims and still not overly burden people of
Crappy situations that they're in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A bit of a wordsmith.
Can we do both? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, as you've pointed out earlier, it's left or right, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah, and that's why I'm starting to hate politics. It's more about winning than it is about doing things, doing the right thing, making society better, making laws better.
And yeah, I don't know if I'm a good politician because I'm still idealistic and think we should do the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
no matter who is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think our juvenile justice system should still be focused on reforming kids while they still can.
Yep. Because if you don't, and this is something we've talked about in terms of the Minneapolis public schools achievement gap, if a kid, whether the failure is yours, is the school's, is his, or his parents, whoever's fault it is, doesn't matter. But if you have a kid who's getting off on the wrong foot in life, that's not good for the kid. That's not good for society. That's not good for that kid's victims later on down the road. It's in everybody's best interest to reform a juvenile offender so they don't turn into a lifelong offender.
Yeah.
Just do that.
A little shock and awe at the beginning would save a lot of people a lot of problems later. First time I lipped off to Mr. Gorder, who was the principal at North Elementary. He grabbed me by my ear and walked me by my tiptoes into his office, where he read me the riot act and then called my parents, and my parents
Sided with him.
absolutely.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And guess what? I never lipped off to Mr.
Yeah.
Gorder again.
And that's a combination of your parents' view of discipline matching up with his view of discipline, and them trusting his judgment. And for kids who are wired how you were and how I was as a kid, that's all that's needed. Like, you goof up, this happens, so you never goof up again. But there are kids who aren't wired that way, and I really don't know. Like, I don't know if they're savable or not, because not everybody is.
You got to try for those that are still worth it.
Yep. Yep.
But, and this is the part where I think we're falling down, you got to try to save that kid, but not at the risk of the public.
Right.
Okay?
That's it.
I went out to New Jersey, the New Jersey Intelligence Center once, and the founder of the New Jersey State Police was General Schwarzkopf, Sr.
Okay.
Not Norman.
Not Stormin' Norman?
Not Stormin' Norman. His dad.
Okay.
And they've got a quote on him, his quote on the door, and I'm just going to paraphrase, but it's the primary goal of law enforcement is to prevent further crime.
Yeah.
That should be first.
Yep.
Make sure there's no more victims.
Yep.
Do what you can to save the perpetrator,
But
make
yeah.
sure there's no more victims.
Yeah.
Right now we've got a crime wave that is of epic proportion, and something's got to be done about it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stop the bleeding. When I go to some of these meetings that we're having right now, they just want to talk about, what can we do to, do some after-school programs and make some changes in these kids' lives. That's great, and we should.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an either-or.
Right.
It's we should, and we should also make sure that these kids aren't sticking guns in people's face. We're not doing them any favors
Right.
by not holding them accountable when they go to, I think carjacking, it's not what it is. It's armed robbery.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's armed robbery, most of the time with violence.
Yeah.
Because not only are you sticking the gun in a person's face, you're whacking them over the head with the butt of the gun, and we've seen it's going to be a murder.
Yeah.
An armed robber is just a murder waiting to happen,
Yep.
and you're not doing those kids any favors by not holding them accountable.
You never do anybody any favors by like, the best thing you can do for somebody, and as a parent you know this, is hold people accountable. That's how people get better. All right. Thank you very much, State Representative Paul Novotny. You're a good guest. We should do this again and again and again.
Thanks, Jack.
Agree with me. All right.
Yes. Bye.